The Friday dinner rush was always a storm at Miller's Diner, and Emily was right in the middle of it, weaving through crowded aisles with a tray stacked higher than her own head. Plates clattered, silverware scraped, children cried, and the greasy scent of frying oil hung heavy in the air.
Ow!
To anyone else, it was chaos. To Emily, it was a rhythm fast, messy, demanding, but oddly familiar. She balanced 3 plates on one arm, her sneakers sliding across the greasy tiles as she dodged. A toddler darting under the tables. "Order up," the cook barked from behind the pass-through window. She grabbed the plates without missing a beat and delivered them to a booth of truckers, flashing the smile that seemed to come naturally to her, even on the hardest days. Truckers grinned back, immediately softening in her presence. "Thanks, sweetheart," one of them said, tipping his cap. "Need more coffee?" Emily asked. She was already reaching for the pot before they could answer. That was her way, always anticipating, always making sure people felt cared for. But behind the counter, in the shadows of the kitchen, Rick stood with his arms crossed. His eyes followed her every move, not with pride or approval, but with the cold, calculating glare of a man who viewed kindness as inefficiency. He was the manager thinked, always sweating, and quick to remind everyone that without him, the place would collapse. Most employees kept their heads down and prayed he wouldn't turn his temper their way. Emily had endured it for 2 years. She was small-town born and raised, and she wasn't one to talk back. She needed the paycheck. Rent wasn't cheap, and her mom's medical bills were piling up. The diner had become her lifeline, even if it drained her. That night, however, something unusual happened. The door chimed, and in shuffled a man who didn't quite fit the Friday night crowd. While most customers came in families or workers in dusty coveralls, this man was alone, his jeans worn, his flannel faded, a baseball cap pulled low over his brow. Carried himself like someone trying not to be noticed, but Emily noticed anyway. She always did. He sat at a corner booth near the window, and when Emily came over with her usual cheerful smile and pad in hand, she saw him glance at the menu with hesitation. His hands were clean, smooth, not like a mechanic or farmer. His eyes, they darted around, studying details. The chipped paint on the walls, the crooked daily special sign. The way Rick barked at a busboy for moving too slowly. He was watching everything like a man cataloging. "What can I get for you tonight?" Emily asked warmly. He squinted at the menu. "The house special." Emily leaned in and lowered her voice. "Honestly, don't. It's been under the heat. Lamp too long. The grilled chicken is fresh. Will thank me later." For the first time, his face softened into a small smile. "You're honest. Not many people would tell me that." Emily shrugged. "Well, you're spending your money. Might as well get something worth it." He chuckled quietly and nodded. "Grilled chicken, then." "Thank you." She wrote it down quickly and gave him a reassuring smile before darting back toward the kitchen. Behind her, the man watched her go, eyes lingering with curiosity. When she returned with his meal, she set it down carefully and said, "Coffee." "On the house?" He raised an eyebrow. "On the house?" She grinned. "On me." "Don't tell my boss." Then she winked and walked away, leaving him stunned by her small act of kindness. Throughout the evening, she checked on him just as she did with every table. She refilled his cup before it was empty, slid him an extra napkin without being asked. And when he lingered over his meal, she brought him a slice of pie warm, the dollop of whipped cream on top. "No charge," she whispered. "Everyone deserves dessert sometimes." The man stared at the pie, then at her, as though no one had done something kind for him in a very long time. "You didn't have to. Neither do most people when they're kind," Emily replied with a shrug, already rushing off to another table. But not everyone saw her kindness the same way. Rick burst from the kitchen, red-faced and loud enough for half the diner to hear. "Emily, what the hell are you doing?" She froze, holding a tray of empty glasses. I was just... You were just giving away product?" Again, he jabbed a thick finger toward the man's booth. "Pie isn't free, sweetheart. It comes out of your paycheck." The diner went quiet, eyes turning to the scene. Emily flushed crimson. I "I'll pay for it," she stammered. "That's not the point," Rick snapped, his voice sharp like a whip. "You think we're running a charity? You're here to sell, not to make friends." The man in the corner booth shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. He simply watched, his gaze unreadable. Emily ducked her head, mumbled an apology, and returned to the kitchen, her throat tight. With humiliation? It wasn't the first time Rick had embarrassed her in front of customers, but it hurt every time. The man finished his meal quietly. When he left, he placed the money for his bill on the table with a generous tip tucked beneath. He gave Emily one last look, half smile, half something else, like gratitude mixed with pity. Before slipping out the door into the night, Emily didn't think much of it afterward. She was too busy cleaning tables, stacking chairs, and finishing her shift exhausted and drained. By the time she dragged herself back to her tiny apartment, her feet ached and her spirit felt heavier than usual. The next morning, she walked into the diner, hoping for just another day, another chance to scrape by. But Rick was waiting. He leaned against the counter with his arms folded, a smug smile plastered on his face. "You're done here," he said flatly. "Blinked what? You heard me? Fired. Can't have staff giving away food and making me look bad in front of customers. You're a liability." Her heart dropped into her stomach. "Rick, please, I've been here 2 years. I need this job, not my problem," he sneered. "Maybe next time you'll remember kindness doesn't pay the bills." And with that, he held out his hand. Apron. Emily's throat closed. With trembling fingers, she untied the only uniform she'd ever worn and placed it in his palm. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall until she stepped out of the diner and into the morning sun. She walked home in a haze, humiliation and fear clinging to her like smoke. She had rent due in a week, bills piling up, no savings to fall back on. All for what? For being kind? For offering a stranger a slice of pie? She spent the rest of the day slumped on her couch, staring at her phone as she scrolled through job listings, dishwasher, clerk, fast food cashier. Every posting blurred together, each one offering barely enough to survive. Her chest tightened with panic. Without the diner, how would she make it? By nightfall, exhaustion pulled her under. But even in her sleep, she dreamed of Rick's sneer and the stranger's quiet, watchful eyes. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the man she had helped the night before wasn't just another tired customer. He wasn't who he seemed at all. And by the next morning, her life would be flipped upside down in ways she'd never imagined. Emily woke up the next morning to the dull gray light of dawn pressing through her curtains. Her apartment felt colder than usual, emptier, as though the walls themselves understood what she had lost. She rolled over, staring at the ceiling, the ache of exhaustion in her body mingling with the sharp sting of humiliation. Fired. The word clung to her, like a stain she couldn't scrub away. For the first time in years, she didn't have to put on her diner uniform, lace up her worn sneakers, or sprint to catch the bus downtown. Instead, she lay there, her mind racing. She thought about her mom, about the unpaid medical bills stacked like bricks on the kitchen counter. She thought about the landlord who wouldn't care if she was short on rent. Most of all, she thought about Rick's smirk when he took her apron, as though stripping her of the job was a personal victory. Her stomach twisted with both anger and fear. She wanted to scream, but she didn't even have the strength. She dragged herself up eventually, brewed cheap coffee, and sat at her chipped kitchen table scrolling through job postings again. Nothing looked promising. Nothing looked like enough. By mid-morning, she felt numb. She couldn't bear the thought of seeing her coworkers, of them finding out she'd been fired. She couldn't bear the thought of telling her mom, who already carried enough guilt about being a burden. So Emily kept her phone on silent, ignored the outside world, and tried not to cry. At noon, there was a knock at her door. She froze. Nobody ever came by without calling first. She tiptoed to the door, peered through the peephole, and felt her breath catch. It was him, the man from the diner. It's the one she'd given pie to, the one she'd gotten scolded over. For split second, she considered not opening the door at all. but something about his expression, calm, patient, almost gentilized her hesitation. She cracked the door open. "Hi," he said simply. His voice was deeper than she remembered, steady but kind. "Hey, how do you know where I live?" she asked, gripping the door frame. He gave a sheepish smile. "I asked one of your coworkers." "Don't worry, I didn't tell them why. I just did die." "Wanted to check on you?" Emily blinked. "Check on me?" "You looked out for me when you didn't have to," he said. "I saw what happened with your boss. I know it cost you your job." "That's not right." Her throat tightened. "Don't even know me?" "Maybe not. But I know enough." He paused, then added, "My name's Daniel." She studied him carefully. The baseball cap was gone, and without it, he looked different. His hair was neatly cut, his clothes a little too well fitted to match the disguise he had worn at the diner. There was something polished about him, something deliberate. He didn't look like a customer anymore. "I don't need pity," Emily muttered. "I need a job." "Ah." Daniel's eyes flickered, but he didn't push. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. He held it out to her. She hesitated before taking it. Her eyes scanned the simple black letters and her breath hitched. Daniel Miller. CEO, Miller's Hospitality Group. Her brain scrambled to connect the dots. Miller's Hospitality Group, the company that owned Miller's Diner and dozens of other restaurants in the region, the company her paycheck had always come from. She looked up at him, her mouth falling open. "You're yes," he said with a small smile. "I'm your boss. Technically, your boss's boss's boss." Emily stumbled back a step, her heart pounding. "But last night you looked like just another guy grabbing dinner." He finished for her. "That was the point. I was undercover, trying to see how things really run in my restaurants. I wanted the truth, not a staged performance, because the owner was visiting, and you gave me exactly that." Emily's mind spun. All the pieces clicked into place, the way he had studied the diner, the way he had quietly observed everything, the way he had seemed both out of place and intensely focused. He hadn't been a customer at all. He had been testing them, testing her. She pressed a hand to her forehead. "Oh my God." Daniel's smile faded. His tone turned serious. "Emily, last night you showed me something I almost never see. Genuine kindness. You didn't know who I was, and you still treated me like I mattered. You were honest, thoughtful, caring. That slice of pie you gave me told me more about you and about how my restaurant is being run than anything else could have. And I'm sorry to hear you were fired for it." Emily's throat closed. She shook her head in disbelief. "So what now? You came to what? Tell me I'm a nice person and then disappear." Daniel shook his head. "No, I came because I need people like you, because people like Rick shouldn't be running one of my restaurants." Her heart thudded. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Daniel continued carefully, "that I want you to come back. Not as a waitress, as the new manager." The words hit her like thunder. She blinked rapidly, convinced she had misheard. "What?" "You heard me," he said gently. "I'm offering you the manager position. You know the diner better than anyone, and you clearly understand what customer service is about. You care. And that's exactly what we need in leadership. Not bullies, not men like Rick." Emily's knees wobbled. She grabbed the doorframe to steady herself. I can't be a manager." "I don't know how." Daniel smiled knowingly. "Neither did I when I started. But you'll learn. I'll make sure you're trained, supported, and paid fairly. You've earned this, Emily." Tears blurred her vision. Just 24 hours ago, she had been humiliated and stripped of her job. And now, standing in her doorway, was the CEO himself, offering her something she had never dared to dream of. A chance. A real chance. But the thought of Rick made her hesitate. "What about him?" she whispered. Daniel's smile turned sharp, his eyes flashing with a steel edge she hadn't seen before. "Don't worry, I'll handle Rick." Emily swallowed hard, a mixture of fear and relief swirling in her chest. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of hope. A door had closed yesterday, but today, a much bigger one had opened. Daniel handed her a folder from his jacket. Inside were forms, details, and an offer letter that made her breath catch when she saw the salary. More than double what she had ever made before, enough to cover rent, bills, and even start saving. "I don't expect you to decide this second," he said kindly, "but I believe in you. Think about it." When he left, Emily sat at her tiny kitchen table, staring at the folder, her hands trembling. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks, not from fear this time, but from something else. Something she hadn't felt in a long time possibility. She stayed awake most of the night, her mind buzzing, imagining what life could look like if she accepted. The weight of her mother's bills, the constant fear of losing everything, the humiliation of being treated like she was nothing, it could all finally end. By dawn, she knew her answer. The next morning, Emily walked through the doors of Miller's Diner with her head high. Daniel was already there, waiting at the counter with a small smile. Rick was beside him, red-faced and sweating, his expression somewhere between outrage and fear. The rest of the staff whispered from the corners. Watching the scene unfold, Emily's heart hammered in her chest as Daniel turned to her and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Emily, welcome back. Meet your new team. As of today, you're the manager of this diner." Emily stood frozen, the weight of Daniel's words still hanging in the air like a lightning strike. She could feel every eye in the diner on her, the buzz of whispered voices crawling along the walls. The greasy smell of bacon and coffee felt surreal in that moment, as if she were standing in a dream. She wasn't sure she believed. Rick's jaw dropped. He took a step forward, pointing a finger at Daniel. "You can't be serious. She's a nobody. She's a waitress I fired for giving away food. She doesn't have what it takes to run this place." Daniel's calm expression didn't waver. He didn't even glance at Rick. Instead, he looked right at Emily, his voice strong and clear. "You cared more about the customers than anyone else in this room. That's what makes a leader. This diner isn't run by bullies. It's run by people who remember why we serve food in the first place. And starting today, you're in charge." The room erupted in murmurs. One of the cooks, Marcy, let out a low whistle. Another waitress covered her mouth in shock. Rick looked like he was about to explode. "You can't just walk in here and give her my job." "Can," Daniel said evenly, finally turning his gaze on him. "Because this isn't your job anymore. Pack your things. You're finished here." The silence that followed was almost deafening. Emily's heart hammered against her ribs. She had dreamed of Rick getting his comeuppance, but she never imagined it happening like this swift final and in front of everyone. Rick sputtered. You don't know what you're doing. She run this place into the ground?" Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Funny, because from where I stood last night, you were the one running it into the ground. And don't worry, Rick, I've got people waiting to talk to you about how you've been treating employees. Harassment doesn't go unnoticed in my company." Rick froze, his bluster shrinking into something smaller, meaner. His lips twisted, but he had no words. He stormed off toward the back office, the door slamming so hard it rattled the walls. The staff exchanged stunned glances, then slowly turned their eyes back to Emily. She felt her knees wobble. Her throat was dry, her palms sweaty. She wanted to disappear, but she also felt something new building inside her. Not fear, not shame. Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "This is your team now. Lead them the way you know how." And just like that, he stepped back, letting her face the room. Emily swallowed hard. She glanced at Marcy, at the waitresses who had once rolled their eyes at her, at the dishwasher still wearing his apron, at all the people who had watched her be humiliated by Rick day after day. For the first time, they were waiting to hear what she had to say. Her voice shook at first, but it steadied as the words poured out. "I know this is unexpected. Believe me, I didn't see this coming either. But what I do know is that this diner is more than just a job for me. It's been my second home. And for too long, it hasn't felt like one for any of us." Heads nodded. She saw relief flicker in their faces. "I'm not going to pretend I know everything," Emily continued. "I'll make mistakes. But I promise you one thing. I'll never treat you the way Rick did. We're going to work together. We're going to make this place better for us and for the people who walk through that door." A murmur of approval swept the room. Marcy gave a small clap. Then another worker joined in. Within seconds, the diner echoed with applause. Emily felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them back, her heart swelling with something she hadn't felt in years. Belonging. Daniel stepped forward again, his voice warm. "I'll leave you to it, Emily. I'll check in soon, but I trust you. Don't forget you earned this." She nodded, her throat too tight to speak. When Daniel left, the diner shifted into a new rhythm. Emily rolled up her sleeves, helping with orders, checking on customers, and making sure the morning rush didn't spiral into chaos. She wasn't just managing from behind a desk. She was on the floor, showing her team she was one of them. It wasn't easy. There were hiccups, like when the grill overheated or when a delivery came late. But instead of panic, there was cooperation. The staff worked together, and Emily kept her promise, listening, encouraging, and supporting. By lunchtime, the diner felt different, lighter. The air wasn't filled with fear anymore. It was filled with energy that night. After the last customer left and the doors were locked, the staff gathered around Emily. For years, they had dreaded closing shifts, but now they lingered. Marcy crossed her arms, grinning. I'll say this. Emily, you've got guts. Didn't think you'd ever stand up there giving speeches." Emily laughed softly, shaking her head. "Neither did I." The dishwasher, a quiet kid named Tony, spoke up. "It already feels better here, like we're actually a team." Emily's chest tightened. That was all she had wanted to, make this place better for everyone. When she got home that night, she sat at her kitchen table with the folder Daniel had given her. She looked at the offer letter again, the new salary, the benefits. But this time, it wasn't the money that made her cry. It was the realization that for the first time in her life, she had power to change things not just for herself, but for others too. Over the next weeks, Emily threw herself into the job. She reorganized shifts so nobody was overworked. She pushed for fairer tips distribution. She introduced small changes: fresh flowers on the counter, a free coffee refill policy, a monthly staff night where everyone could eat together after closing. Customers noticed too. Regulars started coming back more often. New faces walked through the door, drawn by the buzz that Miller's Diner felt like a friendlier, warmer place than before. Rick, meanwhile, was gone. Rumors trickled back that he had tried to land a job at another restaurant, but his reputation had caught up with him. Emily didn't gloat. She didn't need to. The best revenge was watching her diner thrive without him. One night, a familiar figure walked through the door. Daniel. No baseball cap this time, just his easy smile. Ice at the counter, ordered a slice of pie, and watched the place hum. With life, when Emily walked over, he looked around, impressed. "This feels like a completely different diner." Emily smiled. "It is." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I knew you could do it. Seeing it with my own eyes, it's better than I imagined." For a moment, Emily thought back to that night, when she had slid a slice of pie to a man she thought was just another customer. She had done it because it felt right, not because she expected anything in return. And somehow, that single act of kindness had changed her entire life. As the night wound down and Daniel left, Emily stood at the counter, wiping it down with steady hands. The neon lights flickered against the window, and she caught her reflection, tired but proud, stronger than she had ever been. The girl who had once been fired for caring too much was now the woman leading a team, reshaping a diner and building a future she never thought possible. And for the first time in a long, long while, Emily believed she was exactly where she was meant to be. The story ended not with revenge, but with justice. Not with loss, but with triumph. And it all began with a slice of pie.